Imagine you're strapped to a carbon fire rocket wearing 3 layers of fireproofs and it's 30 degrees outside with 80% humidity. You're basically in a sauna wrestling a car at 300 kilometers an hour, but your drink water temperature is comparable to tea and there's no chill playlist in the background. By lap 20, you're drenched, by lap 40, you've lost a couple kilos in sweat, and by lap 61, you are questioning your life decisions. Welcome to Singapore. This is Formula One's original night race, lit by 1,600 floodlights, filled with fans, and famous for pushing drivers to the absolute limit. And though some people might call this race boring, there's no question that this is one of the most demanding and punishing challenges of the calendar. So what makes the Marina Bay circuit so special? It's a counterclockwise street circuit 5 kilometers long with 19 corners and 4 DRS zones, with the race itself covering 61 laps. Which doesn't sound too crazy until you remember that it's very bumpy and that given how the circuit is set up with tight corners and narrow tracks, this race has the lowest average speed on the calendar. Which means that it also takes the longest amount to complete, pushing the 2-hour limit. It's almost as long as an Azerbaijan qualifying session. That is if we don't include safety cars, which, with the exception of 2024, has happened at every single race on this track. Marina Bay is all about precision and going into the turns at the right speed and the right angle. The way you enter turn 1, for example, is fundamental for the outcome of turns 2 and 3. The curbs are also something that the drivers have to be very aware of, especially the internal ones that tend to be quite unforgiving and have caused a lot of crashes. This isn't really a track where you overtake, it's one where you wait patiently for the driver in front of you to melt in the heat and make a mistake. So naturally, most of the action is going to take place on Saturday during qualifying. But just because most of the action will probably take place on Saturday does not mean that Sunday is doomed to be a snooze fest. We have had quite a few historical moments, shall we say, on this track. And what better than to start with one of the most controversial moments in Formula One history, the 2008 Crashgate. On lap 14, Nelson Piquet Jr., who was driving for Renault, suddenly lost control and slammed into the wall. To most viewers, it looked like a simple mistake on a tricky circuit. However, behind the scenes, it was anything but. You see, his teammate Fernando Alonso had pitted unusually early, so when the safety car came out due to the crash, the whole field bunched up together, leaving Fernando in the perfect position to go ahead and win the race. But later, the truth came out. Renault management had asked Piquet to crash the car on purpose. And I'll give you 3 guesses to figure out who was the team principal that made that decision. Actually, you'll probably only need one. It was our very own Flavio Briatore. Yep, the current boss at Alpine. I'm not saying team principal because I think they actually do have another team principal. I don't even know what his role is at the moment, but he is definitely in charge. And right on time for the Singapore Grand Prix, a few days ago, Felipe Massa, who lost the title fight in 2008, launched legal action worth $82 million against the FIA, Formula One management, and Bernie Ecclestone, accusing them of covering up an incident that, in his view, changed the outcome of the championship. He is obviously still salty about losing the championship, and maybe rightly so. Massa is the driver who was leading the race up until the crash. However, the crash itself is not what stopped him from ending up in the points. It was his own pit stop.
Fossero lì tutti a rifornire. Saranno oggetto adesso di analisi e probabilmente di penalità.
And it's impossible to tell if the outcome of his pit stop would have been the same if it had been outside of the safety car. So I personally don't think that this legal action is going to go anywhere. I mean, it's been 13 years.
It's been 84 years.
But either way, the first hearing is happening in October, so we'll see then. And given how the season is going, I wouldn't be surprised if we had another controversial team decision in Singapore. Who knows, maybe we'll see Yuki Tsunoda kamikaze into both McLarens and Max Verstappen taking the win. However, I do think that Laurent has more integrity than that. But I wouldn't put it past McLaren to stir up the internet a bit by making use of their papaya rules. But let's talk about another moment in Singapore that is a little bit less controversial, but definitely more chaotic. The 2017 Singapore Grand Prix, and what the hell did they put in the Ferrari drinks, because it sure ain't water. The track was a little bit slippery and Vettel squeezed Verstappen, Kimi shoots out on the inside, and boom, all three collide in less than 10 seconds. Both Ferraris gone before turn 1 for the first time in history. And this year is set up pretty nicely so that even if the race itself might end up being boring, the context around it makes it anything but. On one hand, we have the McLaren team definitely consecrating themselves as constructors' champions in this race, which they should have done in Baku. And hopefully this means gloves up from now, no more papaya rules, and I want a genuine championship battle. Lando and Oscar are incredible drivers, and I'm really glad that they do get along with each other as teammates. However, sometimes they're too nice about it, and it feels as if they don't really care about winning the Drivers' Championship. But someone who is usually very passionate is Max Verstappen, and he is lurking in the background. He does need a miracle to win this year's championship, but he is having a great post-summer season. He won the Italian Grand Prix, he won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and he won a GT3 race at Nürburgring last week because why not? I saw some people suggesting that we're seeing a reenactment of the 2007 championship where both McLarens are very dominant at the front, but they didn't see someone lurking in the background who could possibly win the championship in the last race. And if that happens, hats off to whoever wrote the script for the season because that would be incredible. And with that in mind, we're going to my podium predictions. In third place, I went with Max Verstappen. And I know I said that he's having an incredible post-summer season, but this is a track that he has never really excelled himself in. And even though I think he's going to do great, I don't think he's going to win the race. But, you know, who knows? In second place, I went with Oscar Piastri, and in first place, I went with Lando Norris. This is on one hand because I do want the championship to go to the last race, and also because Lando is the McLaren driver who has excelled himself in this track quite a few times, and he won here last year, so I think he can do it again. ChatGPT went for third place, Charles Leclerc, second place, Oscar Piastri, and first place, Lando Norris. And Gemini went for the same predictions as I did. Third place, Max Verstappen, second place, Oscar Piastri, and first place, Lando Norris. For Baku, I chose one of my 2025 bingo card predictions to sort of hope that it would come true in that specific race, and that was that Williams would get a podium, and it actually happened. And I thought, why not do it again? Even though the ones left over are last race predictions or very unrealistic at this point. But I decided to go with Valtteri Bottas is going to race in Mercedes. This is a race that tests drivers' endurance to its absolute limits. You only have to see the videos of George Russell after Singapore last year to see the toll that it takes on the drivers. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the drivers, especially the rookies, got a little bit overheated throughout the weekend and hopefully not, but possibly crashed due to the fact that there could also be a storm during the weekend. And if that were to happen to one of the Merc drivers before qualifying, then Valtteri Bottas could step in and drive during the race. If he even goes to Singapore, because I didn't actually check that. So that is Singapore. Sweaty, messy, maybe a little bit boring on the surface, but with the potential for a lot of chaos. But what do you guys think about this race? Do you think it's going to be a slog, or do you think it has the potential to be an incredible race? And also, what are your podium predictions for this weekend? Drop your picks down in the comments. Thank you for hanging out with me, and as always, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want more content, and I will see you all after Singapore.